Alrighty, hello everybody, and thank you guys for joining us today. I am here with Attorney Powers and Attorney Milian from Powers Law Group. We will be talking on DACA, tips on preparing new applications, and considerations on advanced parole. There's been a lot on the news on DACA lately. Some good, some but we are moving and grooving over here, guys. So, if I'd like to introduce Miss Attorney Powers, she is a board certified attorney and she has, sorry guys, having some technical difficulties. And yeah, she started working on from PLG for about, let's say, maybe 12 years now. Ruby, would you say, give or take?
Yeah.
So you can say she is a professional. She is she's on the ALA Innovation Task Force, which is the American Immigration Lawyers Association. So that's really cool. So say hello, Ruby.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course. And then we have Miss Attorney Milian. She is here with us today. She is the vice president of MABA, the Mexican American Bar Association of Houston, which is super cool. Very cool program. And she is, of course, the associate attorney at Powers Law Group. She is very, very smart and very, how do you say that word? And yeah, very responsive to our clients. There we are. Both of them speak Spanish and English, so we are a bilingual firm. And Ruby speaks a little bit of Turkish and French, so just in case anybody was wondering. So yeah, thank you guys for joining, and let's begin talking on some DACA.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. And this is for potential clients, people who are looking into this, existing clients. We're going to put this on our social media and be accessible to anyone. So today, just for timing, understanding, because so much has changed, is July 31st, 2020. So we are going to tell you what's happening as of today, July 31st, 2020. So today we're going to go over the Supreme Court rule that happened in June, what's next for DACA recipients who can apply, give you some tidbits on what you would need to do to collect, to start preparing travel, advanced parole, talk about congressional response and what we can do, and alternatives to DACA if that's not something you're eligible for or can't apply for or what have you. So just, it's always good to know a backup plan. So let's go ahead and get started. So the Supreme Court decision was on June 18th, and we all got it very, very excited. But it was very short-lived because even though the Supreme Court said, the short version was that they said it was arbitrary and capricious. The reasons given by the Trump administration to end DACA back was September 5th, 2017. And after all this litigation, they said, no, the reasons you gave were wrong. You can't just get rid of a program because of those. But they basically said you have the power to get rid of it because it was an executive action. And this is what you would need to do to get rid of it. So we were all on pins and needles thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen? Is USCIS going to give us guidance? Because obviously we can apply now, right? Well, for that next whole month, some people applied. We were being a little more cautious. We were getting excited and prepared, but we were waiting for guidance. A lot of attorneys, it was a mix around the country. Some of them applied, and because they applied and got rejected or were not moved forward, they were able to move forward with litigation. And a federal judge, this was only, I think, 2 weeks ago today, it feels like it's so long ago, said the Trump administration needs to accept new applications and follow the program in its original 2012 state. And we didn't go into the history of DACA, but most of you probably know that it was created under a memo from Obama in June 2012. And they started June 15, 2012, and they started accepting the applications in August, 2 months later, 2012. So basically, Supreme Court says, hey, DACA is still valid. You can't get rid of it. Federal judge says about a month later, hey, come on, you should be accepting these applications. And last week I was at the American Immigration Lawyers Association conference, and we're all excited and we're all talking and we're like, yeah, we're going to file, we're filing everything. And I recently got this article out in the Houston Business Journal about the uncertainty and what was happening. And then on Tuesday of this week, we get a memo that is, I think it's like 8 pages long. I've got it here. And it basically says that they've issued a memo to, basically not to reject all pending and future initial requests, and to make any renewal down to one year. Oh, and Attorney Milian, what else would you say happened from this memo, and then your takeaway?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, so what they basically said is that they're rejecting any initial DACA requests, applications. They're also, one of the things that they stated is that they're going to reject any new or pending advance parole requests. I know that we had some questions regarding that, and we weren't sure if they were accepting it, but this memo makes it clear that they're not accepting advance parole. Another thing that unfortunately came out of this memo is that they're limiting the period of in which a person can renew their DACA. Usually the renewal would grant you 2 years where you can work with that work permit, but now they limited it to 1 year. So that's a very big change that we see in this. But even though this has come out, there's several people that are still filing them. I know that we were talking about this earlier today. Ultimately it's going to be up to the discretion of the applicant, right? If they want to file and knowing that it's likely going to get rejected. But the thing is that once you file and get a denial or a rejection, then it gives you standing so that you can go on to a federal court to litigate whether or not USCIS was correct or not in rejecting your application.
So this memo was is available online somewhere, but it was called the Chad Wolf memo from July 28th, 2020, and this is a bit of a summary of what it says. And ultimately around in the immigration attorney circles and the constitutional law and the legal circles, we're just baffled that the Trump administration is not following. They're in contempt of the Supreme Court. What they should have done if they wanted to get rid of it was to have a memo that explains why they shouldn't have it. I mean, in a way, that's sort of what they're trying to do here on this July 28th memo, but I think it still will fall short of the test when finally reviewed. Bottom line, there's going to continue to be litigation. You would think that the Supreme Court making a decision would be the end of it, but what we're seeing here is it's not. And I don't know how often that something like this has happened, actually. So we're giving you the background, but what we wanted to tell you is that if you are still considering applying, that you should still file if you're understanding that there's going to be still some litigation coming up. And that we also should be getting prepared once we see some change, because we're very hopeful there'll be a different administration in January and that we could get the DREAM Act, or at least get DACA reinstated truly to the 2012 memo, and potentially soon to have a DREAM Act soon after. So we're giving you history, we're letting you know what people are doing, but we're giving you power of information and letting you know that you if you're eligible, you should be eligible for travel advance parole and or DACA. You should go ahead and get the documents prepared, waiting either to file now or to wait for a little bit more certainty if you're willing to be more patient, even if that means waiting till January if we have a new administration. So let's get in a little bit more into that then. So there's a lot of commonly asked questions that we get. How can I apply? How long will it take? What are supporting documents? Can I file myself? Where do I apply? Do I have to renew? So on, so on. Okay, so the short answer for everything, and we're going to go into a little more detail, is you can apply for DACA. It's just that right now they might reject, deny, or put in a holding, but we're anticipating some litigation in just another couple of weeks as soon as we have some standing of whatever they do in regards to this Tuesday memo of this week. You can get prepared for your DACA submission. You can get prepared for advanced parole, because a lot of that takes preparation. Whether you should file on your own, I would suggest not to, because of all the constant changes. We just gave you an update of just like 6 weeks worth of news, and it's gone back and forth. I would suggest having an experienced attorney on your side. And you can still apply for renewals right now. It's just that according to this Tuesday memo, they'll only be giving you 1 year at a time instead of 2 years. So let's go ahead and get started into a little bit more of the details. Attorney Milian, do you want to just go over briefly what the key components are?
Sure. Just the most basic criteria you have to, in order to qualify to apply, you have to have been at least under 31 years of age. As of June 15th, 2012, you must be at least 15 years of age to apply. And there is no age requirement if there's a previous removal order, if your parents were in proceedings and you were included in that. You had to have continuously resided in the US from June 15th, 2007 until present, entered the US without inspection, or if your visa expired before June 15th, 2012. There's educational requirements that you have to meet as well. Show that you've already graduated from high school, or that you have something to the equivalent, like a GED. And you can't have a criminal record. There's something called significant misdemeanors that will make you ineligible for this. And you can't pose a threat to public safety. So these are some basic requirements, but there's, more.
And we'll go into a little more details in just a second. And what we've seen from the consultations that we've had is that the people who are applying now are those who were eligible before, but either got rejected because of something happened with the nonprofit, or they filed on their own, or maybe they didn't meet the requirement on that moment that they applied because they didn't have the GED or the education or the evidence or whatever it was. The other group that we're seeing are those who, for the last 3 years, are just now turning 15 and being eligible. So because if they weren't 15 and weren't in removal as of September 5th, 2017, they weren't able to apply. So so those who are coming of age, and they're wanting to drive, they want to be able to have some part-time jobs, this and that. So those are probably the two groups of people we're seeing. The ones who didn't apply because either they missed it or they didn't have the right documents at the time, or the ones who now are just eligible because of age. And so let's go into a little detail. So we're going to give you a little parts of a lot of from our list of documents we give our clients, just to let you know, because I really realize is that, when we applied for these back in the beginning in 2012, we only had to show 5 years of proof, and a lot of people, these years were not too far away. But what's happening right now is these years are farther away, because it's 8 years after this program was started. So everyone's going to have to collect more evidence, and to do that, it's going to take some digging. And a lot of times, the more time passes, the evidence starts dying away. So obviously passport style photos, and we've been doing a lot of, people could take photos on their own, and we've been able to print them in the office to submit, but these are things you do at Costco, CVS, or something like that. Identification, if you can get easily a passport from your home country, for example, Mexico, I believe it's not that difficult to in the Houston area to get an appointment to get your passport. This is helpful. You need to have some type of a government issued ID with a photo. And then proof that you were under 31 as of this date. This is pretty simple, as long as you have like a birth certificate that's showing your age. and then entered before 16, passport with a stamp or I-94 card. I mean, but a lot of people entered without inspection. So as quickly, if you were enrolled in school, then you can show that you were at whatever age you were. You know, we have to get really creative on this number 4 because a lot of people didn't enter legally, and it could be transcripts, report cards, doctor's appointments. You know, the hardest part is those who entered and then went straight to work and did everything under somebody else's name when they didn't go to school because they weren't really in the system. We've had to work with people who had very difficult chances to prove this, but it is possible. But the thing is the more you wait to collect this evidence, the harder it is going to be to prove it. And so what I'm saying is if you're eligible but you just don't want to apply right now, you should still be collecting this as if you're going to apply as soon as you feel more secure with the program. Present on June 15, 2012, you know, this is a lot of the same stuff. School records, of course, it's the summer school. I mean, that's middle of the summer, but financial records, hospital, medical. Did you have a kid? Did you get married? Do you have bank statements? Do you have phone records? And again, I'm saying something that's 8 years ago. So you need to start collecting that if you haven't already. The other thing is it's not exactly like you have to be here a document from that day because that could be nearly impossible. But if you can show proof of like a week or 2 before, a week or 2 after, that often will meet the requirement. School, you know, it's easier when you can do the school requirement than the military sometimes, but the military usually gives you a lot of documents, so that's actually not too hard. But for school, it's if you're enrolled in school, you've graduated with a high school diploma, or you have the GED certificate, you're enrolled in a program to get one of those. What happened in the beginning was there was some homeschooling GED programs that were not accredited. A lot of people got denied because of that. The biggest key is that you need to be enrolled or meet the requirement when you submit and when they adjudicate it. So that's really important. If you file it and you don't meet the requirements, but then they give you a request for evidence and you turn it in, they will deny it if you didn't meet it when you applied. And the other things, this is where it gets a little bit more cumbersome, is because now that so much time has passed, if you haven't applied already, you're going to have to prove that you've been here for the last 13 years. So we're really suggesting about one document per quarter. You can show this with leases, employment records, school, taxes, children, marriage, birth certificates, but phone records, insurance. But you really need to start collecting this because that's 13 years. And what I would suggest is to start putting it in order of chronological order. You don't want to submit anything that might put you in a negative light. So just keep that in mind. Like for example, for employment, if you didn't have work authorization, which is usually most people in this situation, but this number 7 is the one that I think is going to be the most cumbersome. People are going to have to go collect all of this evidence. And we have a question. Someone raised a hand. Dana, how do we take a question from a raised hand?
Okay, so let me see, Miss Cecilia. What is your question?
There you go. Ask. Oh, there you go. Ask. There you go. Hi. Yes. Hi. What's your question?
Was that me? I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Sorry.
It's okay.
All right. Now we have to figure out how to
There we go.
I see it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Okay, no problem. All right. Well, now we learned how to do that. So proof economic hardship, I mean, that's pretty simple for lots of people. You pretty much say, I've got a family, I need work authorization to help pay the bills. And even more so in this economy that we have. this doesn't really take a lot of effort to prove this, but it does just writing a sentence or two and showing some evidence. And then if you have a criminal record, you know, that's really where you need to come talk to us and make sure that we can clear that it's not going to disqualify you. We've seen people who've gotten DACA and then later got a DWI, and that disqualifies you. And so that, you know, that's unfortunate, but we've had some people have like public intoxication, DWIs that were reduced to public intoxication, and they were able to move forward with DACA. So let's, if you ever left before August 2012, you need to show that it was brief, casual, and innocent. We really don't see that very often right now, but that is something that could have happened. And if you have a removal hearing, you need a document, you need to get that copy of the evidence. We've had plenty of DACAs, people who have DACA that have been in removal or had a final order in the past. So you remember also that DACA gives you some type of it's like a protection where they won't pursue the removal order. But what we've seen on a lot, what was happening was if a person got DACA and they had been in removal proceedings and it hasn't finalized, we were trying to terminate the hearing. But what they did is they did administrative closure. And one thing that the immigration court has been doing, because they have a lot of time on their hands and the trial attorneys, is they've been opening up a lot of administratively closed cases. Now, I'm not necessarily saying DACA ones, but they have been doing that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do that for DACA cases if we can't get this resolved fast enough by a new administration. But being all that said, the immigration court is probably not going to open for a while, and I doubt they can't do too much damage in just a month or two at the end of the year. So I wouldn't be too afraid of that. And that you were not in a status on June 15, 2012. So did you want to add anything else, Attorney Milian, to these requirements?
No, not right now.
Okay. So one other beautiful thing about DACA, besides, you know, it gives you work authorization, you can apply for your real social, you can apply for your driver's license, is that you also would be eligible for advanced parole. And the gist of it is that you can travel. You have to, the key points are you have to have DACA for a good amount of time still left. You need to apply for, you need to have a valid passport, and you need to meet one of these requirements, the humanitarian, educational, or employment. And then you would submit it, and then if it gets approved, and in time of whatever you're trying to do, and before your DACA expires, then you could leave the country and come back in with a legal entry, enter with a parole. And the value of that is tremendous, because if you happen to be married to a US citizen, for example, then we could potentially do an adjustment of status. And also just the fact that you could travel, because many people haven't gone to their home countries almost as far as they can as they've had memories. But the gist of it is that for humanitarian, which is the one we saw the most, is that it was to visit somebody who was sick, attend funeral services, to see someone before they lose their sight, or they're in a coma, or to help a family member, because something along those lines. Educational, we've seen things like study abroad or academic research. Usually those don't, I haven't seen those get approved, or I haven't seen those as much as I saw the humanitarian. And the employment, that can get a little tricky too if you have a set date and you can't get it approved fast enough, because there is not like a premium processing for these types of documents. So, and now that if they are going to just give you a renewal for a year, this might be tricky to get the advanced parole in time. Again, I'm really hopeful that we'll have another administration that's pro DACA and Dreamers by January, so that this will be a moot point. But the biggest thing to consider is if you are married to a US citizen and you entered without inspection and everything else is pretty clean, and of course it'd be great for you to have a consult so we can screen that, then you could get advanced parole which is so under the original 2012 memo, and then leave and come back in with a parole, and then you could adjust inside the country. We've done that a lot before September 2017, and we'd love to continue doing that. And I think that this needs to get resolved. But what I would say for everybody who's interested, and this would meet your give you a pathway to a green card, you should collect your documents, because a lot of times when you do the sick relative visit, you need to get doctor's notes, you need to get it translated into English, and you need to put together a statement, and it takes a little time. But anyway, this does exist. It is in the same state as open for litigation as before, but what I would suggest for people is to get your documents in order. So, you know, we've got another raised hand. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but
Yes, that was actually on purpose.
Okay.
My question is, how long is enough time on like the passport or to have? Like mine expires next year. My passport expires next year on December the 28th, and then my DACA expires next year on October. So how long for the advanced parole would be enough time?
I think that's good. And you're right, because you have to get everything aligned. You need to have your DACA with enough time, your passport with enough time. The general rule for travel is that your passport should have at least 6 months or more for travel. And I mean, what we were seeing with advanced paroles back when they did them was about 3 to 4 months. So again, with USCIS being all over the place, because we don't know if they're going to be furloughed or not past the end of August. We don't know, you know, what's going to happen there. What we might be saying is be ready for January. You know, that might. But even if you filed in January, and if everything was running at a normal pace, you would still probably get it by the summer or something. It's still travel. But I guess that is it could be cutting it close. But worst case, you could just go get your passport renewed with more time before you file for the advanced parole. Okay, so then let's see. I guess we're coming closer to the close, and we just wanted to say that, like, honestly, DACA was really a temporary fix. And what we really need is a DREAM Act. You know, we've been wanting a DREAM Act for as long as I can remember. We need it. And the House, so ultimately, Congress needs to act. And this is beautiful to know that the majority of Americans want Dreamers to remain in the country. I feel like they're the easiest group to advocate for, because we don't, because they're the ones. They came as a young age, they didn't have control over their future, and they've acclimated so much so that they are so hardworking. They've you know, pursued education and build their pillars in their community. They have built families and their careers, and so they're like the easiest group to advocate for, honestly. And so the House has passed the DREAM Act, but the Senate has not done anything in it. And I know that the House, the president would probably kill it, even though he's using it as a pawn to get some type of negotiation power. So one of the things that we'd like to say is that we need to register. We need to tell all of our friends who are U.S. citizens, all our family who are U.S. citizens, to register to vote and vote. I regularly go to DC, and you know, pre-COVID, and Sylvia Garcia, Lily Fletcher, our congresswomen for the Houston area. We have others. I talk to them about immigration on a regular basis. Sylvia Garcia is a very strong proponent and just advocate for immigrants, and as well as Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And, you know, really, I even ran for office because of SB4 and a lot of other reasons. So, you know, we have to stay engaged. We have to make calls to the congresspersons and Senate, and we need to make sure every American that we know is registered to vote and is going to vote for a pro-immigrant representation this fall. And not just for president, it's also all different other, from the state rep is very important too, especially in Texas. We have the SB4 was a very anti-immigration bill, and that really impacts everyone as well. So I just want to say that I have a strong feeling that if we get a pro-immigrant administration in November, by January, we should start seeing some improvements. And even if you get full instatement of 2012 memo of DACA, and soon after, it's just a matter of time that the Congress acts on a DREAM Act, we're going to be in business, and we're going to see a pathway to a longer future. Things to think about. Do you want to talk a little bit, Attorney Milian, about some of the things that people can be considering if DACA doesn't work out, or in making a backup plan for the DACA right now?
Sure. So the first one is adjustment of status, but that's if advanced parole were to be a thing still, and they would allow that. But if we know that they're not accepting advanced parole, so that is probably not an option for you right now. But something that you can consider is a provisional waiver if you're married to someone who's a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident, or if you have a parent that's a lawful permanent resident or a U.S. citizen, and if they would suffer extreme and unusual hardship if you were to get deported, or if they weren't up to allow you to back into the country, then this is something that you may want to consider. A provisional waiver requires a lot of proof, just like, with your DACA and anything else. And the provisional waiver actually has a form. It's called the I-601A. And in the next slide, we're going to talk about how the fees are increasing and all that. So if you think that you may be eligible for this, then maybe this is a good time for you to speak to, with one of the attorneys from the firm, or, just to know more about this process, because you don't want to wait until the fees increase, and you don't want to wait. There's some proposed changes even to the provisional waiver. So you want to make sure that you get that done in time. And you don't just go straight to the provisional waiver. Obviously, you need the I-130, the petition from your relative first, as the first step to qualify for that. Another thing that you can consider, and we say this with a lot of caution, is asylum. You don't want to file a frivolous asylum claim if you don't have one, but if there is, if there are things happening in your country, for example, Venezuela, right, where we see there's a lot of political turmoil, then this is something that you can consider. Asylum is also another application that will be impacted by the fee changes. They're proposing to charge $50 for an asylum application. And right now, there is no fee associated with an asylum application. Another thing is cancellation of removal, but you have to be in removal proceedings in order to qualify for that, where you have to show that you've been in the US for at least 10 years and that you're a person that has good moral character, which means that you basically can't have a criminal record the way that the law has it right now. And we've had a lot of precedent established in the last year and a half, where it makes it almost impossible for you to qualify for cancellation of removal if you have DWIs, more than one DWI. So that is a possibility too. And you have to show, also you have to show proof that your mother or your parents or your spouse or your children would suffer extreme and unusual hardship if you weren't allowed to remain in the US. So these are just a few things, but there's other things. If you've been a victim of crime, you've been a victim of domestic violence, that's something else that you can also consider.
And the other thing about the adjustment of status, and there was a question in the chat about that, and we're going to be giving you our links, because we're closing up soon, to our newsletter, our social media, and ways that you can stay connected and find this video later to share with your friends who couldn't join us today. But adjustment of status could also work, maybe someone, maybe a relative, an aunt, petition for your mom before April 30th, 2001, and you might be 245I eligible, which means that you entered without inspection, and you could pay a $5,000 fine. They call it the multa, and then you could adjust if you have maybe a U.S. citizen spouse or a child that's 21 and up. So, and someone had asked in the chat, well, what if I get my child to petition for me, and they might be 16, 18 right now, but if we don't get a DREAM Act before long, but they could petition for you when they are 21. Now, again, we need to make sure we screen that properly, but it would sort of look like a clean case would be maybe you entered one time illegally, you get DACA, you get advanced parole, you travel, you come back in, and then either your spouse or your child who's 21 and up petitions for you, then that would work. Of course, I'm talking about the future laws, and if the laws are changing 2 or 3 times a week, I'm hoping we'll have more stability in the future, but you could work towards that as a possibility. And the thought here is that if we do get a DREAM Act, we don't know what it's going to look like, right? Because a lot of them say, oh, you have to have it for 5 or 10 years, and then you can get your green card. But it might work out that you could get it faster through one of these alternatives we're mentioning, or maybe some other thing that they come up with along the way. But some of the big key takeaways are keep evidence, keep your entry, where you've been, what you do, your birth certificate, your kid's birth certificate, your marriage, your divorce decrees, keep it somewhere safe, scan it somewhere. We have hurricanes and we've got crazy stuff that happen. Scan it, keep it somewhere safe so that at the moment's notice, if you needed to give it to somebody like an attorney or a family member, especially with COVID's a little crazy right now, right? That you could get it to the right person. The other thing is keep evidence of that you're paying your taxes and that you're here. For the cancellation of removal, the biggest thing that judges look at are 10 years of taxes to show that you've been here. And they could come up with something like 245I or some other registry or some other thing that says you needed to be here these years and pay a fine, show your taxes, and then you get a green card. And we just leapfrog over DREAM Act. And because really if Vice President Biden were to win in November, he has a plan for immigration reform on day one. And there's 10 to 11 million people who don't have a status in the country. And so I think that we have to keep that in mind. The other thing to mention, to piggyback on the asylum, is that if you have a changed circumstances, that can make it open up for why you waited so long to apply. And that can be difficult to prove, but having DACA and then losing DACA could be considered a reason to show that you had to change in circumstances. But to prove asylum, it's past persecution, fear of future persecution on account of one of the 5 protected grounds. So that's why we say it's a potential last resort. And as she mentioned about provisional waiver, that the consular processing, that whole thing, a lot of people look at the 2 years that it takes and they run away. But honestly, the people who stayed the course and did it, they're so happy because they've got their green card and they are on their way to citizenship and they're on their way to building a better lives for their families. So don't discredit that. And one of the biggest things we've seen from people coming and talking to us is that we find out they're eligible for something right now. And that's why we're doing this webinar, right? That's why we prefer people to come have consults where we can do a deep dive. And do you want to mention the recent updates?
Yeah. So we know that this webinar is focused on DACA, but we just wanted to briefly mention 2 updates this week. There's an increase in filing fees that's going to take effect October of this year. So if you are debating on whether you want to apply for something or know of a family friend that may be eligible to become a U.S. citizen or become a permanent resident, make sure that they know this. The N-400, which is the application to become a U.S. citizen, it's going to go up about 83%, where they're going to charge an additional $530. For people that are wanting to renew a work permit, that's the I-765, that's going to go up 20%. So that's going to be an additional $80 as well. So, we're going to continue to monitor this and we'll always let you know what the fees will be, but just keep this in mind. when making your decisions on whether or not you want to pursue something right now. Another thing that we saw this week is that there was an injunction from a judge in New York regarding public charge. This is something that we've talked about a lot in the last year, the last 6-7 months, regarding the new forms, the I-944, if you're doing a process here in the US, or the DS-5540, if you're doing a consular process outside of the US. Well, right now, what they're saying is that, that is no longer something that's being implemented. But, like we were talking about earlier with how different attorneys are taking different approaches, we're going to continue to file for some of our clients. And we're going to continue to see, what guidance USCIS gives on that, because we don't want something to get rejected, 2-3 weeks from now if the department or USCIS comes out with a new memo saying that, we're going to override what a federal court is saying. So just so that y'all could know this is happening in the background.
And the best thing that we tell everybody is just get connected with us on our newsletter, which has been posted in the chat. You can click on that and get added. We don't send it every day. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of work, but we send it every other week in English and Spanish, and we distill what's the key takeaways. We also do regular Facebook Lives, and we also are doing these weekly webinars on topics. Next week, we're going to do provisional waiver, and that'll be Friday at 11. And we really just want to, so if that's an alternative for you or someone we're going to walk you through that. I've been doing waivers for 12 years. I regularly speak to other attorneys at conferences about them, and you really want somebody who really understands it. So you can call us for a consult, you can email us, you can find us on social media so that you can get our updates. We're going to be, where can they find this webinar later to share with their friends and family, or watch it again if they want to, Tina?
Alrighty, thank you guys, and thanks Ruby. So if you guys want to find the recording, it will be on our website and our YouTube and on our Facebook page as well. If you guys would like to get this recording, please feel free to go to our website and again our YouTube, where you guys can share the link to friends and family. If for whatever reason you cannot find this, just send us an email at contact@rubypowerslaw and we can send it to you directly. But yeah, guys, please feel free to join us on Fridays for our Facebook Lives. And then like Ruby stated, we are going to have a provisional waiver for I-601A webinar next Friday. So please join us for that if you or anybody may apply or just want some more information on what is even that, So yeah, please feel free to join us. Attorney Million and Attorney Powers will be here to answer any questions that you guys may have with their expertise per usual. And yeah, thank you guys. If you guys have any questions or would like us to make a video on another type of immigration topic, please feel free to send us an email, again, contact@rubypowerslaw, or even just shoot us a call at 713-589-2085, and we'll be sure to accommodate. So again, thank you guys so much. Attorneys, would you like to say anything, ladies?
No, thank you for your time.
I would just, we're still preparing, we're still applying, and we're still telling everybody to register to vote and vote this November. We have to stay positive, and we need to get a DREAM Act, and we need to get this resolved. So stay strong. You can do this, and we're in it together. We're there for you. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. And any updates that we get, we will let you guys know, we promise. And thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.